Hello and good morning. I'm Jamey at Stonemaier Games, and I'm here in a different place for a reason that I'll mention in a minute for the next hour to hang out with you. Let me know if you don't mind in the comments if you can hear and see me okay, because I am on my laptop instead of my normal desktop. See some friendly faces joining us already. And yeah, if someone, just before I ramble on, if someone in the comments could confirm if you can hear and see me, that would be lovely. Let's see. Okay, you can hear and see me. So the reason I'm on this laptop is that, very brief, I'll maybe tell the story a little bit more in a minute. We had a big tornado coming through St. Louis. It directly hit our neighborhood. Our building was fine, but we lost power for around 3 days, and we still haven't gotten internet back, which is, yeah, I miss internet so much. But I'm at a friend's house right now. That's why I'm on my laptop. I think honestly, I miss my desktop the most. I can't really do much on my desktop computer when we don't have internet. But I'm very grateful that we have power and very grateful that our building is undamaged. We did find a leak recently, so there apparently is maybe a little bit of minor damage, but compared to a lot of the houses in St. Louis, definitely not as bad. But yeah, thank you for joining me today for this out of the office video. I've been working from this friend's house since Monday, and they're out of town, so it's nice that I can work here in peace and quiet. Garrett says, does my desktop have Wi-Fi? It does. You could possibly use your phone as mobile hotspot. That is true, Garrett. And maybe I could consider that. Actually, I will give a shout out to AT&T, my mobile provider. They have been very generous to say that people like me who are impacted by the outages caused by the tornado right now, that we have unlimited data for like the next month. So that was very kind of them to do. So that is a possibility, Garrett. I think the types of things, it is possible. And maybe I should consider that. Unfortunately, I can do a lot on my laptop, but a lot of the design work that I do in InDesign, I can't do, and I can't it involves me often downloading photos to put into the templates on InDesign to put up on videos like this. I film videos on StreamYard. So I don't want to film a video on my roaming data plan. But anyway, yeah, so that's why you might have noticed that there's no cover image for today's video. It's because I could make it on InDesign, but I couldn't get it online to over to my laptop. But yeah, anyway, I guess I'll talk about the tornado really briefly. I was at Geekway to the West, which I'll talk more about, a big convention here in St. Louis. And on Friday, we got news that there was going to be a storm front coming through St. Louis, and there might be the possibility of tornadoes. And so we were all prepared for tornado sirens in St. Charles, where this convention was, which is about 30 minutes west of where I live. And but it never really came. We heard some heavy rain on the roof, maybe some hail, but we were fine. It passed by, and we then had a beautiful day at Geekway. And later on, later on that afternoon, I found that we were out of power where I lived. But I was like, okay, well, that's kind of to be expected for a storm like this. And then afterwards, like partially on the drive home, and then in the days that followed, I realized that this big tornado that you may have heard about, especially in the U.S., it was a massive tornado. It essentially touched down in the heart of St. Louis, a place called Forest Park, which is right in the middle of St. Louis. This massive tornado touched down there and then headed directly for my neighborhood and hit my neighborhood and then continued north of there. And so the place where I live, the place where I work, had a direct hit. There are so many trees down, but fortunately, very fortunately, our building was unscathed by it. And you can see this if you look at the tornado footage. There's some buildings where there were missing windows, the roofs were torn off, their second floor was torn off, and there are some buildings right next to them that didn't happen to them. A lot of trees fell on cars and buildings and things like that. So it's and really, I didn't think about this, and I know my coworker Susanna probably does. She knows a lot about trees. But the really sad thing about these trees is that these are big, old trees, probably easily 80, 100 years old, maybe even older. And we can rebuild buildings, but we can't you have to replant a tree and then wait 80 to 100 years for it to be as big and amazing as these trees were. So my heart goes out to really like Mother Nature and all the people who are benefited by having these big, beautiful trees providing shade and oxygen, along with all the people who currently still don't have power, who like me don't have internet, who lost their houses, who lost their cars, things like that. It was very odd to live for a few days without power. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have ever lost power for more than a day. I don't think I have before this. This was about 3+ days, almost 3.5 days without power. And it was just surreal part of it was I was at a convention all day, so I didn't notice it when I was there. And then I'd come home and it would just be dark at home. And I would go to bed really, really early because I could read on my Kindle for a certain amount of time, but then it's just dark out and my body is telling me to go to sleep. We lost some food in the fridge, but we're vegetarian, so a lot of the food wasn't going to go bad after a short period of time, so we were okay there. Anyway, if you have any questions about what happened, I'm happy to talk about that, but I'll talk more about Geekway and whatnot in a minute. I see Tim saying, are you going to watch the Survivor finale tonight? What do you think of this season? Tim, we don't have internet, so we can't watch it, unfortunately. I guess we could go someplace else and watch it, but my plan anyway, despite the lack of power and internet, was to watch it on Friday with friends. So I wasn't going to plan to watch it anyway. I really enjoyed this season. Lots of ups and downs, very emotional season. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And I really hope that we have internet back on Friday so we can host Survivor Night. Chad says, what games did you bring to your temporary residence? Well, they actually have a bunch of games here. I'm on a laptop here, so I can move this a lot more easily. Here are some of the games. Can you see that? In the collection here. But I've mostly just been focused on working while I'm here, and then going back home to do some pencil and paper game design and relax and sleep and eat a little bit at home too. Ralph says, I've designed a prototype of a game, and I'm sure based on playtesting that it could draw interest in the market. Do you recommend creating a company to publish it first or finish the game first? Good question, Ralph. I mean, either way, I would recommend that you finish the game. I mean, that the game design process is going through the process from start to finish is really important. But then that is a big choice for you to make. Then the question is, do you want to run a business? Are you interested in all the things that go into running a business? Or are you really just more excited about playtesting the game and designing the game? So if you just want to do that, you could submit it to a company. If you are excited about the publishing side of it and the risks that come with it, you could self-publish it instead. But the first thing first is to go through the process of designing the game. It's great that you've made it so far. You've designed a prototype. That is maybe the very tip of the iceberg, although it's better than just having an idea. So you're somewhere, Ralph. But get that prototype to the table, iterate, playtest for at least 3 to 4 months to get to the table a dozen times, if not more. And you'll see it evolve over time and then start to think about what you want to do with it next. But congratulations on making it that far. Chad says, did you actually see the tornado? I didn't. I've seen photos of it from afar. We were in a big convention center, so I didn't see it then. And the area where it touched down was pretty far from the convention center. But also we were close enough to it that we would have been, if we had been home, we would have been in the tornado. So I don't think we would have been able to see anything other than trees bending. Tornadoes, I think, look quite different when you're in the middle of it than from far away. So Wayne says that he also lost power due to the hurricanes. Wayne, did you learn anything from that experience about things that you do differently in the future if there's the possibility of losing power? Like a friend, for example, recommended something to me. I believe a company called Jackery. That might be the wrong name for it, but I believe that was it. And it was he recommended this power source that it's like a portable power generator that you can have handy. And I was trying to figure out if that's something that's worth investing in. I'm not entirely sure that I can decide that, because when you're without power, the main thing that I found that we lost was the fridge. So we were losing food, but we didn't lose that much food. And we fortunately have access to, a lot of other friends and other places in St. Louis that we can go to. I think it would be unlikely for all of St. Louis to lose power. So I couldn't tell if it was worth the investment to do that or not, to get a portable power generator to power things like the fridge. I don't think it could really power lights. It could power like a light, but not the whole house of lights. And we used flashlights to get by. I don't know. I see Melissa lost power as well. James was in a major earthquake and lost power. With an earthquake too, you have the risk of losing water as well. So water, internet, power. Those are we fortunately had water here as well. This is very generative, Garrett. He says, we made a donation to the St. Louis Area Food Bank, which seemed to be a reputable local charity based on some research and comments we saw if people are looking for a place to support. Thank you, Garrett, for doing that. That's very, very generous of you. Melissa says, we lose power if a breeze comes by. Yeah, Susanna says, I'll encounter the tree loss firsthand this afternoon when I come to the city. I'm bracing myself. Yeah, I haven't driven through Forest Park yet, Susanna, but even just driving by Forest Park, which is it's one of the biggest public parks in the country. I believe maybe second to the big park in New York City. And there are so many big old trees there. And it's I've already, even just driving along the outskirts of it, I can see so many trees are down. Let's see, Director Dan says, on your recommendation, my husband and I have been cooperatively playing Blueprints. What day are you on? Last night we reached room 46, which was a very exciting moment. Such a fun game. Congratulations, Dan. Yeah, that's one of the goals of the game, I've heard. I have not made it that far. I believe I'm on day 15, but I haven't played it in a few weeks because of other things that I've been busy with. But I'm glad you're having fun with it, and it's neat that you're playing it together. I would love to play it together with Megan. Garrett says, how's your headspace knowing that reviewers have or will soon have Vantage in hand? So yeah, I guess quick Vantage update here. I sent a Vantage update, a big update on Monday. Vantage is the cooperative open world game that I've been working on for a long time. And we recently finished production of the first wave of Vantage, which is intended to cover all direct orders. Vantage will go on our web stores in mid-July is what we're looking at right now. But as part of that, Panda shipped out the advanced review copies. They shipped copies directly to people, to reviewers not in the US, and they shipped some other copies to Miniature Market, our fulfillment center here in St. Louis, and they will then send them to reviewers in the US. So if you're in the US and you're expecting a copy of Vantage, you already know who you are, but we need it to arrive in Miniature Market first. You'll get a notification probably by the end of this week. Garrett, how's my headspace? I'm excited. I would say I'm more excited. I'm sure I will be nervous at some point because it's kind of crucially important that at least some reviewers really enjoy the game as much as I do. But I feel pretty confident in the game, and that at least the people who know what it is kind of know what they're getting into and will enjoy it. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. I think I will be nervous later in June, which is when these reviewers can start to post about it, post review content, post playthroughs. There will be a Watch It Play video from Rodney at Watch It Played, things like that. Jason says that he had no power as well. I'm sorry to hear that. And his wife and him played a lot of Wormspan using the camping light to help our mental state during a few stressful days. I can definitely relate to that stress. I'm glad Wormspan provided a refuge for you during that tough time. It is a little surreal just to, even though we have power now, and even though I have internet access here at a friend's house, I feel like a digital nomad right now. Like it doesn't feel like regular life yet. And I would really like to get back to regular life. I'm a very routine-based person, and I miss some of the routine-based things that I can do at home, including just turning on the TV, something I take for granted. It isn't necessary for me to live, but life feels a little bit different without those routines that I'm used to. Maxwell says, do you think Vantage will make it under the 90-day tariff window, the 30% tariffs instead of the 145% tariffs? Or are you planning to get it later this year? That's a good question. For the first wave, at least, I'm very confident it will arrive in time. But 90 days will go by fast, especially for the second wave, which won't ship out until late June at best. And so that one will be very close. And that is the wave intended for distributors and retailers. So that's the one that's there's less flexibility in terms of the margins for that wave of Vantage. So I really hope so. But we are finding, even for the ship out of Vantage, because the tariffs went from 145% to 30%. And when that happened, everyone was trying to get their goods out of China over to the US. And so it means that there's a huge amount of demand for shipping containers right now. So our shipment that would usually only take about a week to get out of China and then another 4 weeks to get to St. Louis, is now taking around 3, maybe even 4 weeks to get out of China. And then will probably take longer to get to St. Louis as well, because of all the port congestion it will encounter in on the West Coast. So another reason these tariffs are really frustrating. It's a self-imposed thing that the U.S. government has done to U.S. businesses, and it's really damaging in so many different ways. Even with the reprieve, it's wild. Yeah, here's Christopher talking about tariffs as well. What is your perception of how the tariffs and uncertainty is affecting small publishers on crowdfunding? We have ours live now, and despite a decent following, there's a ton of hesitancy for backers to pledge. Christopher, I'm seeing it impacts newer creators the most, but even I'm seeing it impact larger creators. I think there's a big psychological impact, because I don't think people yet have really seen the inflationary impacts of tariffs. We will quite soon, but we haven't seen it yet. But in terms of the feeling of uncertainty and economic uncertainty, I think that feeling is relevant and is powerful. And I think we are seeing that impact on crowdfunding. I don't crowdfund personally as a creator anymore, but I do follow a lot of campaigns, and I know creators like you have spent a lot of time getting these games ready or getting whatever your product is ready to crowdfund, and it's my heart goes out to you that it's not having the same result as it usually would without these tariffs in place, or at least also not just the tariffs, but also the uncertainty around the tariffs, because who knows what could happen after 90 days. We recently sent our order to our manufacturer for our winter holiday print run, which we usually start that around now. It arrives typically in late October for the winter holiday season. And we went with a much more modest approach than normal, because we don't know what will happen after the 90-day. I call it a reprieve, but it's still 30% higher than what tariffs were in January, when they were 0%. Okay, so Ian does recommend a generator, and he's on a septic system, so he really needed that too. Yeah, our water system isn't connected to our electricity where we are, Ian, but I can definitely see what you're saying there, the necessity of that. And Maxwell says, get solar with batteries. Yeah, this company, I think Jackery is the name of it. They have a solar powered generator. See some others recommending. Here, Chad says he uses the generator for freezer, fridge, and sump pump. We also don't have a sump pump, but the freezer, fridge, I can see that. It was actually, you know what we found the most frustrating at first? We couldn't use our microwave, and so I was surprised by how much I use it to make oatmeal in the morning. We often use it to reheat leftovers and things like that. But we do also have a gas stove, and we realized that we can use our gas stove to heat up food. Not oatmeal. Well, actually, we probably could boil water. I could make oatmeal on the stove. Yeah. So that it's nice to have that off the grid feeling of a gas stove. Kevin says, how many game designs are you typically working on at the same time? Typically around 2, but because I'm not just, that's as a designer, but I'm also a developer. I'm also a publisher. So we often have 3 years worth of games in the works, which is also often around 6 games in the works at various stages of the process. Kevin says, when you get inspiration for a design, does it get all of your focus? No, it gets some of my focus. It might get all of my creative focus for the hour or 2 a day that I have time to spend on game design and brainstorming, things like that. Kevin says, how do you balance the responsibilities of running a company with designing new games? Yeah, typically the first 9 hours of my day are spent on running the company, on marketing, project management, content creation, customer service, communication. all the things that and development, also game development. And then after dinner, I usually set aside, or I try to set aside 2 hours for creative time. Typically game design if I can. So that's how I balance it. I compartmentalize my day in terms of what I do. And Kevin, I do want to piggyback off that question because I posted a video that ended up being a lot of fun this past weekend, where I went through my list of hundreds of ideas for game themes, game mechanisms that I've had over the years. And I picked the 20 that were most intriguing to me at this time. And I posted them on a video on YouTube. The video was called something like "You Decide Which Game Design Should I Focus On Next." And so I posted all of these ideas, 20 different ideas for games, sometimes very small concepts, sometimes a little bigger concepts. And I asked people to pick from 4 different groups what their favorite ideas were that they think that maybe I should focus on. And it was really fun. The post has gotten around 500 comments of people posting their picks for games. And it has truly given me a little bit of a sense of direction for what 1 or 2 future projects might be based on those ideas. And maybe even more. I think all the ideas were exciting enough for me to post. So if you're curious to see the types of things that I think about in terms of game design, even if I don't necessarily end up pursuing those ideas, feel free to check out that video. Oh, yeah, Wayne mentions, so he says about the power generator idea. The biggest issue was the heat and no lights at night. The no lights was weird, but we got by without that. No AC, no air conditioning in St. Louis, as we get really, really close to the summer here, is problematic. We kept the windows open, and fortunately, it wasn't too hot for the couple days that we didn't have power, but it was definitely more difficult to sleep. I did not sleep well. I still really haven't really slept well over the last couple of days, but it was very difficult to sleep without air conditioning on. I don't know if a portable power generator would help that though, because I don't think there's there probably is a way, but it's a little tricky with my exact condo. Marsha says, do we have a price yet for Vantage? Marsha, I have a price in mind, but I don't know exactly what our web store price will be. And all of that might be impacted by the tariffs, because who knows if they will actually stay what they are for the next 2 months until we launch Vantage. So I do have a price. The thing that I've publicly said about the price for Vantage is that it is an expensive game, but it is not our most expensive game. Our most expensive game, I believe, was $135. That was the Ironclad version of Expeditions. But that is, so I guess if you know it's going to be less than that, but you could, if you're looking to set aside money for Vantage, it's honestly, it's also a little bit hard for me to answer that, because I can say that it's not our most expensive game. So, you know, it's going to be less than $135 US, but there are also 3 different add-ons that you can add on to the game, which do push it to be more expensive. So if you want some of those add-ons, you might want to budget a little bit more. It also depends on whether you're a Stonemaier champion or not. If you're a Stonemaier champion, it'll save 20% on it. Yeah. Let's see, Chad says, I finally played a Mistborn solo cooperative game. It was really good. I still haven't played the cooperative version. I've only played the competitive version. I found it interesting that the solo rules worked for a cooperative variant. Is that something Automa could do for Stonemaier Games? They've done it for some Stonemaier games. It isn't their core focus, but it is something that I've heard more people request, that they wish that that the Automa solo modes could be extrapolated to cooperative play. And I think even just without specific instructions about it, you could always play with a solo mode and like just team up with another player and play against the solo mode. It gets a little bit more tricky when you want to have multiple players playing with the solo mode in play, primarily because it is a different aspect of game design to even have that with the standard competitive play, but also to have it cooperative. It's a different design process, but it is something that Automa is aware of and something that I think they're thinking a little bit more about. Imagine Eric says, any concerns of Vantage playthroughs spoiling some of the content? If we are purchasing it, would you recommend avoiding playthroughs? That's a good question, Eric. I know for sure, like any playthrough of Vantage will spoil content, but I think that's the type of thing where you can watch it at your own risk. It's a big world. There's a lot of cards. There's a lot of locations in the world. So the odds that someone is at the same location where you have been before and they take the same action that you want to take the odds are very low. And the odds also that you'll even remember that when you get to that location sometime in the future are also very low. So I think it's up to you. I would say that it's worth maybe giving some of the playthroughs as they come out in late June of Vantage, giving them a try or giving one a try and seeing if it's a good fit for you. And if you find yourself watching, you're like, oh, I wish I could experience that firsthand myself instead, that's okay. The other thing, and just stop watching. The other thing that I want to say, though, is that I want people to feel comfortable sharing their Vantage stories. It doesn't always need to be super specific, but when I play Vantage, I because there's the visual element of it paired with what you were reading about and what you're adding to your tableau, there is a very memorable story. Well, not very memorable. I found it very easy to remember and then tell that story in a few sentences afterward. And so I'm hoping people feel comfortable doing that and sharing photos of their final character card grid and things like that. I want people to feel comfortable sharing. And if they don't want to see that content, they can just not look at it when it appears on social media. Yeah, that's my current take on it. Jeff says, so glad I had the opportunity to show off a turn of Vantage at the Stonemaier Games booth. So many people came up with lots of enthusiasm. Thank you so much for doing that, Jeff. Yeah, so I'll talk about Geekway to the West for a minute here. Geekway to the West is a casual play convention that happened in St. Louis over the past weekend and Thursday, Friday. So a 4-day convention where you just come and play games. A lot of it is centered around the play and win section, but it's also just a casual play convention. There's a small vendor hall, but the focus is on playing games. And we had Vantage. We had the one copy of Vantage that exists in the US right now. We had that set up at the booth for people to come by and just look at it if they wanted to, or they could take a turn and see what a turn looks like. And Jeff, thank you for being at the booth there to share it with people. And I heard a lot of people come up to me, find me at some point and say, I saw the copy of Vantage. I took a turn. I had a lot of fun doing that. So that meant a lot that people checked it out. We're able to see it in person for the first time. Geekway overall was a ton of fun. I played 15 new to me games, and I'll read them out loud in a second in case you're curious about any of them. I will be talking about them on videos in the near future. I haven't been able to film those videos because I don't have internet at my home right now, but I'm really excited to talk about those games in the future. I also played around it feels like a dozen, maybe it was a little bit less, games that I already knew and wanted to share with other people. So taught and played a lot of games with a wide variety of people. I tried to play with, I think I easily played with 20 people, probably played with 30 plus different people, which is my goal at Geekway, just to hang out with a bunch of different people, new and old friends and strangers, and just have fun playing games. So I had a wonderful time doing that. The new to me games that I played at Geekway, I'll rattle them off real quick. And if you want more details about these, let me know. Actually, the one prototype I played was the third game in the Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game series. Each of the games is going to be based on one of the Lord of the Rings books. And the designer, or one of the designers of the third game in that series, was there, and he played through a session with us. The published games that I played were Explorers of Navoria, Noon Attack, Rajas the Card Game, No Loose Ends, Castle Builder, Panda Royale, Courtesans, Dead Cells, Rebirth, Deep Regrets, Archaeologic, Hot Streak, which I think hasn't quite been released yet, but close, Cosmoctopus, Transformers deck building game, and Life of the Amazonia. And I would be hard pressed to pick a clear favorite out of all these because I really had fun with every single one of these except for one. One of them, I believe, has a big issue with it, and I'll talk about that in the video. But I'm scrolling through this list trying to think of like what my favorites are. And I had a great time playing that. Part of it was because I had a great time with the people who I was playing these games with. But really, I loved so many of these games. Some of them weren't on my list to play, and I still really enjoyed them. Hot Streak wasn't on my list to play, but I had a blast playing that. No Loose Ends wasn't on my list. I had a blast playing that. Rajas the Card Game. I didn't know anything about that, but I had a great time playing that. And that's just the ones that surprised me. All the others were on my list to play, and I had a great time playing them too. So if any of you were at Geekway and you played a bunch of games and you had maybe a clear favorite, a couple different favorites, let me know in the comments here. I had a great time playing, Jeff is here in the comments. I had a great time playing Life of the Amazonia and Noon Attack with Jeff or Jeff was teaching Noon Attack, but I had a great time playing them. Chess says, how is Walter doing with the change of circumstance? Walter is glad to have power back. Walter is our cat, our very furry, fluffy cat. He's very happy to have power and air conditioning back. He's been very confused about why we're leaving the house and coming and going so much. I think he wants things to be back to normal and the routine back to normal as well, but he's doing okay. Mark also asked about how we're doing with a tornado. We're doing okay. I'm at a different location here because we don't have internet at our house yet. Internet's been out for 5 days now, but fortunately we got power back after 3 days. McIntosh says, do you have Vantage plans for Gen Con? Yes, if Vantage arrives in time, and currently we're looking at Vantage arriving in time for Gen Con. We will have Vantage at our booth at Gen Con, and there are already events set up for Vantage that you can sign up for to learn and play Vantage. There'll be quick demos at the booth where you can just come and take a turn of Vantage. Yeah. Carol says, do you think you'll be able to continue to not watch reviews of your own games with Vantage? It seems like Vantage is its own category for you for how long you worked on it. Oh, Carol, I don't know. You're right that it is something that I thought about. I don't typically watch reviews of my games because I like to say completely as unbiased as possible about what reviewers think. I think I won't. I think I'll continue to not do that. And part of it is that my enjoyment of Vantage isn't. I don't know how to quite say this, but someone else's enjoyment of Vantage doesn't impact how much I love the game and how much I want to share my love of the game. I guess I'm curious at what people will say, but I will see what people say in general because they will post about it on Board Game Geek and on on our website and Facebook group and on Instagram. I will see what the thoughts and questions are about Vantage without me having to watch a review video. But I also I watch reviews of other games as a viewer and as someone who wants to learn about games. And so I do respect and appreciate the opinions of reviewers. So there's always that in my mind as well. Chris says, I've run a boarding group here in Northwest Ohio with over 500 members. How do you drive engagement in the board game space? My goal is to build community, but it just feels like a bunch of people. It's an interesting question, Chris, because you essentially have a community there. You have 500 people who gather, probably talk about games on a regular basis. How do you drive engagement, though? Part of what I find that I like to do is to ask questions. And so I think sometimes that's the best way to drive engagement, to start a conversation, to ask questions to the group and run polls and things like that, whether that's in person or online. I think that's always a good place to start. I often have questions for these live casts. I often post, whenever I post on Instagram or post an update, I often ask questions. I want to know what people think rather than just having people be a part of something. I think that's what you make. Those questions can start the conversations that can lead to engagement. That's a great question to think about. I'm glad you're thinking about that. Greg says, sorry, I didn't formally introduce myself at Geekway. I was the one that mentioned Unstoppable. Oh yeah, Greg, good to see you. And playing on Saturday. I'm sorry I didn't run into you again to play Unstoppable. That's one that I was very curious about, and I appreciate you mentioning it. Hopefully you had a great time at Geekway, though, and it was good to see you very briefly. Greg, who I saw at Geekway as well, is the short-term demand for shipping impacting the shipping costs? Well, kind of. It will. Shipping is typically locked in month to month, and for Vantage, because it's taking so long to ship, we won't be able to ship it out of China until June, and so prices definitely will go up in June. I don't know how much they'll go up, but I'm anticipating they'll probably double, maybe triple in freight shipping costs in June. So I'm bracing for the impact of that, but we'll move ahead. Yeah. Oh, cool. Jeremy says that one of the games I mentioned in the video this past weekend was an arena-based design, and he said Ultimate Showdown is similar to that, and he can show it to me if I'm ever in Denver. That's great. Thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate that. Miye says, what's the initial print run for direct to consumer? What's the over-under and time frame it will sell out? I really have no idea on the second question. We have Vantage is a 50,000 copy print run. We have taken a lot of risk in making 50,000 copies of Vantage, and about half of that is dedicated for direct to consumer. The other half is dedicated towards retailers and distributors. So, yeah, around 25,000 copies. Let's see. I did have a question for you all today. Yeah, so one of the questions that I'm curious about that I'm going to do a video about soon is that I forgot to mention last time is I'm doing a video about my favorite mechanisms from Stonemaier Games released over the last 6 years. So that starts with Wingspan. Wingspan is a little older than 6 years at this point, but around 6 years ago. So what is your favorite mechanism? I'm sorry, getting a call here. I'm hoping to get a call from Charter Spectrum to tell us our internet's back. Maybe that's it. We'll see. But what is your favorite mechanism, starting with Wingspan and moving forward for all the games that came after that? What is your favorite mechanism in any of our games that you would like to see in other games in the future? So if I can, I'll try to remember the games that came out. Wingspan, Tapestry, Pendulum, Smitten, Finspan, Wormspan, Expeditions, Rolling Realms Redux, Apiary, and I'm probably missing a few other games in there, but those are most of the games that came out over the last year. I have a few other favorites here, or not favorites, but list. Tokaido, Stamp Swap, Red Rising, Libertalia, and Vantage in the near future. So if you have a favorite mechanism, I know you haven't played Vantage yet, but if you have a favorite mechanism from any of those games that you'd like to see used in other ways in the future, let me know what that mechanism is in the comments here. Jen says, very fascinating recent video about game ideas. Any interesting feedback from people? Lots of interesting feedback. Yeah, many people commented more in detail than just like listing their favorites. And a lot of those ideas are in my subconscious now. I've been brainstorming some combinations of some of those ideas as for games that I might pursue in the future. Carol says, a similar question. Yeah, Carol, I got a lot of interesting feedback about the different ideas, and really all of the ideas had some support behind them, and there were a few that had the most support, definitely, that I am actively thinking about and brainstorming about right now. Garrett says, am I reading anything good right now? I just started a Red Rising reread after bringing the game out a few days ago for my brother-in-law's birthday. It's become an annual tradition to play with him on his birthday. That's wonderful, Garrett. I am right now, I just finished a book called My Friends. Ooh, and I meant to bring my Kindle here to get internet connection to download some samples, but or download a new book. But I just finished the Frederick Bachman book, My Friends, and I don't have a new book lined up yet. Ralph says, I've been really enjoying all of your game design videos. Do you have any videos on what it takes to run a game company? I do have actually a fairly recent video, Ralph, about the 10 steps to start a game, tabletop game company. So that video is out there, is available. You can also look through the list on our website of, it's under the header of how to design a tabletop game, but there are also other resources there about starting a game company. But really the heart of running the game company and all the content that I've created about that is found on our website. Most of it's in article form instead of video form, but I've created 13 years worth of articles, 2 articles a week about what it takes to run a game company, what it takes to market a game company, things like that. So all that content is on our blog at stonemayergames.com. Dan says, will there be a copy of Vantage at UK Games Expo for demo purposes? Not a whole copy, but I did send some demo materials with my coworker, or sent them to my coworker, Alex. So he'll be there to show people the bare bones basics of Vantage. He doesn't have all the cards. I just sent him a little bit because it takes up a lot of space and it's a heavy game to ship. But if you want to stop by and see what some sample content is for Vantage, we'll have that at UK Games Expo. Benjamin says, is there any complete list of Realm promos with availability? At the moment, I'm finding it a little bit difficult to keep up with them and easily figure out which ones I'm currently missing. Benjamin, yeah, there is. If you go to the Dropbox, the Stonemaier Games Dropbox, and look for Rolling Realms, you will find the compendium there and a checklist there that you can use to check off all your different realms that you already have. And yeah, that's exactly what we have on the Dropbox for Rolling Realms. Chad says, were you able to finish Andor Season 2? We were able to finish that before the tornado changed everything. And wow, yeah, quite an epic finish to a series. And I really kind of love that they made it, that they finished the story of Andor in 2 seasons. I certainly would have watched more seasons than that, but the second season felt like 4 seasons of TV condensed into 3-episode arcs, which I think was a really neat way to tell a broad, sweeping story in a concise, easy to consume fashion. And we immediately started watching Rogue One afterwards. Oh, you said you mentioned Rogue One as well. Yeah, we immediately started watching it afterwards to see how well it connected to Rogue One, and it connects pretty darn well. Tim had the same question about Andor. Johnny says, friend here in St. Louis, could you share more why revealing a game price is better at a specific time? What are the benefits of doing it that way? What might go wrong if it's revealed early? Johnny, yeah, I learned this the hard way years ago where I revealed a price early and then some factors changed. I had more information the closer to the release about things that are out of our control, like freight shipping prices, things like tariffs, just the uncertainty of the world, but also the uncertainty of how are people receiving this game. If we might decide to bundle it with something else, we have more information the closer we get to the launch of the game. I found that there isn't really any advantage to revealing the price early, but there are plenty of advantages and reasons to waiting to reveal the price on actual launch day on our web store. So yeah, it's one of those things that I just kind of learned the hard way that I wish I had more flexibility about it, because I found that once we say that price, that is the price that people think about for the game. And if we change that, then that throws people off more than not knowing the price in advance. Yeah. Steven says, if you needed to make an emergency supply bag for events such as the recent tornado, would you have any travel low light friendly board games for it? I don't know many games that play really well in low light settings. We literally only had a flashlight and our camera flashlights to use for light when we were walking around the house over the last few days without power. Honestly, and I appreciate someone mentioned they were playing Wormspan. That gave them some peace of mind at a time. But playing games wasn't really on our mind, partially because, at least in this case, we were playing games at a convention all day and then coming home to it being dark. We weren't coming home to wanting to play more games. But I guess in the situation where we weren't playing in that situation and we wanted something to get our minds off the situation, we wanted to play a game, a low light, probably a 2-player game with Megan. I don't know. That's a good question. Like one of our favorite 2-player games is the Star Wars deck building game. I don't know if we play that in a low light setting because we need to read a lot of text. It'd probably be a game with very little text, maybe heavier on icons than that. That plays well at 2 players. Maybe the Lord of the Rings duel game, that might work and actually might look pretty cool with candles and in a low light setting. Greg, yeah, it was great to play Cosmoctopus with you, and thank you for teaching it. I know it was a little bit of a burden for you to teach it, but not actually play it. But it was wonderful to meet, or not just me, I had met you before, but to hang out with you and hang out with your wife and your other friends there who joined us. That was a lot of fun. Aaron says, what do you think of Rebirth and Life of the Amazonia? I thought both of those were great. I agree, both were great in very different ways. Rebirth is a game about like very, very quick turns, and Life of the Amazonia had longer, more involved turns. In a bag building game, I really enjoyed both of them for different reasons. Rebirth flew by, and Life of the Amazonia was a little meatier than I thought it was going to be, but I really enjoyed having the flexibility to build out my my nature preserve, I guess the Amazon, build out my area of the Amazon and expand it as much as I needed to place the tokens on it. That felt really, really good and will probably be my favorite mechanism in the game. James says, how did you like Rajas and Courtesans? So I'd played Rajas, the original Rajas of the Ganges game. I'd played the roll and write version of the game. I didn't know that there was a card version of the game until I played it at Geekway, and it was probably the biggest surprise for me at Geekway. It was it was really, really fun. The Rajas card game. It felt like Rajas the Ganges, but it also felt like it had its own new mechanisms. I guess the premise of the game is that you have 6 cards in front of you in a row, and they're essentially tiles. And to win the game, you need to flip 6 of them. And you can flip them from left to right using one of the types of victory points, or you can flip them from right to left using the other types of victory points, or you can mix the two and try to get both types of victory points. There's a lot of game beyond that, but I thought even just that core mechanism of capturing that feeling of 2 different types of victory points in Rajas worked really, really well. Courtesans was a lot of fun. That's one that was also off my radar. It's from Pandasaurus Games, and it was a game about influencing a bunch of different courtesans, a bunch of different people, and on your turn, you're taking a card and influencing one of the shared people on the table. You're placing one of the cards in front of another player, so there's some direct player interaction, but not necessarily good or bad. They can then play around what you just did, and in playing one card on yourself. I really liked it. For like a short, snappy filler game, I was really impressed by it. Really beautiful art, too. Brian says he saw me at Geekway, but didn't have the chance to say hi. It sounds like you played a lot of games. Brian, I'm sorry I didn't get the chance to say hi to you either, but thanks for noticing me. He says, I only got in about 15 total, and they were all new to me. Geekway is such a great time. I agree. Geekway is a wonderful time, and yeah, I played a lot of games, too, and had a great time doing that. Kevin says, will you have a presence at Origins? If yes, will they have a copy of Vantage to look at? I don't, and I'll check our page about conventions on our website. Let's see if we'll be at Origins. It looks like we won't have a presence at Origins, so no, Vantage won't be there. Carol says, how was Explorers of Navoria and the Transformers game, both on our shelf of opportunity? I enjoyed both. I thought Explorers was actually lighter than I thought, but still very satisfying in the different types of ways that you can get the rewards in the game or get the benefits in the game. And the Transformers game was really cool too. It's the first deck builder I think that I've played that uses a spatial element on the table to determine where you can buy cards. It's probably not the actual first game that did that, but it does it really well. A little bit like what I did with Expeditions, but Expeditions is not a deck building game. Corey says his favorite was Crits and Tricks. I had played that before, but that was a lot of fun. And then No Loose Ends. I had a great time playing No Loose Ends with you, Corey. That was definitely one of my surprise favorites of Geekway. Scrolling through looking for comments here. I'm a little bit behind. I'll state the other favorites that people mentioned. Greg's favorite was River Valley Glassworks. I've played that on Board Game Arena and enjoyed it. Jeff's top 5 were Crafting the Cosmos, Rebel Princess, Perch, Bombbusters, and Life of the Amazonia. Jeff played Bombbusters right before the announcement that it's up for one of the big German game awards this year. Actually, that's what Mark is mentioning in his comments here. I haven't played all the games on those lists, Mark, but and I can't remember them offhand, but I know that Bombbusters was on those lists. And Endeavor Deep Sea, I'm glad to see that one made the list. That's a really, really great game. Mark says, would Stonemaier come to Kansas City for CantCon? That's a great question for my coworker, Dave, who's in charge of events and conventions and things like that. It's certainly something that we consider. It isn't too far away from us. I would say there's different types of ways to have a presence at conventions. You can have a booth, but you can also just have someone show up and do the community building side of it. I would say it depends on what the convention likes publishers to do at those conventions. But I would say that we support many conventions, including CantCon, who have play and win sections. So even if we're not physically able to be there, we can have a presence there through the games that we donate to Play and Win. And we do support hundreds of conventions that way. Sub-Zero Leon says, I have designed a game and made a prototype of it. I just feel like it is missing that do you want to play it again feeling. Any advice? My advice in general is to playtest it multiple times. I think it is very normal for a game's first playtest to not have that feeling and not even be functional is normal for a first playtest. So I would say get it to the table at least 4 times with different people, iterating every time you play to make it a little bit better, a little bit more fun, a little bit more functional. And if after those 4 to 5 plays, if you haven't seen the fun and leverage that fun in those iterations to make it a bigger part of the game, making people want to play it again, want to take another turn, then move on from it, put it aside for a while and focus on something else. I think it is very normal for most game design ideas that you get to the table and play test several times to just not work. And that's okay. You can still learn lessons from it and use those for the next game that you play. I see some answers to my mechanism question here. Thank you. I'll skim through these later for my video about it, but I appreciate you all answering that question. Julio says, I liked your video on Sunday. It was fun and different. Are you worried someone could use those ideas too? No, not worried at all. No, I mean, as you can tell from the video, ideas are pretty easy. It's execution that is difficult. Execution, actually creating that first prototype, getting it to the table multiple times, many times, and honing it and iterating it, making it something that's fun, functional, intuitive. That's the difficult part of game design. That is the heart of game design. So no, I'm not. If someone runs with one of those ideas and makes an awesome game, I will be very excited to play it because I know that I won't design all 20 of those games. Mike says, are there any IPs that you'd love to work with in the future? Not off the top of my head. I'm sure one will emerge over time that I want to design, that I want to work with. But I have had the pleasure of working with some IPs already, like the Red Rising IP. But there are no book, movie, TV shows right now that have really captured me for game design specifically that I am pursuing. I see lots of answers to my questions about your favorite mechanism in a Stonemaier game released over the last 6 years. Thank you for answering those. Justin, it was great to see you very briefly at Geekway. He says, some of the ideas I showed sounded goofier and lighter than most of your previous designs. That's true. And some of them might just be like part of a game rather than the core part of a game. He says, do you feel a pull to stay at a consistent feel complexity like an auteur director? Maybe a little bit, yeah. But as you can tell, I'm also open to publishing a game. And I love to publish a game that is one game that is lighter and shorter. But yeah, I feel like my core competency are games that are medium weight Euro games. That is the meat that I enjoy playing. I think that's the meat of what our audience comes to Stonemaier Games looking for. So I think that is still my core focus. But if I'm really excited about something that I think will bring joy to people, that is outside of that, and that I'm having fun designing or developing, I'm still curious and open to doing so. Jordan, thank you so much for introducing your friends to Libertalia. I'm glad it was a huge hit. That's a fun one. I often donate Libertalia to play and win sections at conventions, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, because I think it is a great convention game. I'm glad you had fun with it with your friends. Mark mentions the new season of The Devil's Plan on Netflix, which I'm very excited to start watching in the near future and probably do a video about that in the near future as well. Judd says, with tariffs really affecting smaller and newer publishers without specifics, have you been contacted by other publishers seeking to sell some of their catalog to you? I haven't, not in regards to tariffs. Every now and then I hear from a publisher wanting to do that. And we essentially did that with Tokaido. And yeah, I don't know if it's something that we'll really pursue unless the circumstances are really, really good, where the game perfectly fits our catalog and the asking price isn't too high, because it's a big risk for us to invest a lot in the game and then also still have to manufacture that game and make it, when we could just make a new game and not have to pay that big upfront amount. So I think it's unlikely we will do that in the future, but also didn't anticipate doing that with Tokaido. If you asked me around this time last year, we would do that. Let's see. Julio says, did you and Megan have a chance to connect more during the blackout? I found that in times where we didn't have our phones, my wife and I had conversations that reminded me of why I love her so much. That's so sweet, Julio. I guess a little bit, but our schedules also didn't align for most of it, because she stayed later at Geekway than I did. We did have a nice early dinner out on Sunday after Geekway, where we went out to dinner instead of going right home. At night, we kind of just read together. No, I actually don't know if we had any great just sitting down at home in the dark having conversations. I don't know if we had. I don't think we really did that. So that's our loss for not focusing on that quiet time for conversation. Austin says, I'm working on a game that involves 6 player boards with 5 magnets in each of them. Are inserted magnets too pricey for production costs, or would that be viable? It does add cost. It is viable as well, but it certainly does add a cost. I think it's probably slightly easier to add a layer of magnet than magnets in specific places. But it is possible. I'm glad you're thinking of how the possibility of it adding a cost is definitely a factor there. And you might want to have a backup for what it could be if the magnet idea doesn't work in terms of the cost. Tim says, I've played the search for UAPs at Geekway and found the use of a phone game with gameplay interesting, or phone app with gameplay interesting. You see, use it a game app for gameplay interesting for future Stonemaier games. I don't, Tim. I do love, I don't love, but I appreciate when games use apps to make the game more accessible, more playable, or do something that you can't do without the app. But we don't plan on ever creating a game that relies on an app, just because there are, I think, a lot of issues that can arise when you are having a game that also relies on technology. I mean, we've even, it's just a really tricky thing. And I've heard of games being delayed because the development of the app isn't ready on time, or maintaining the app doesn't work out as well as they hoped. So just a little bit too precarious to me, too much out of my control. Joshua, I got to see Joshua at Geekway as well. Joshua, I wish you had come up and said hi. I really love when people come say hi, but I understand that that's not feasible in all cases. He says, I was starting the game with some people when I saw you. I do appreciate that. In the that's like the one time where it's not great for people to say hi if I'm actively learning the game with people. But so I appreciate you being aware of that. He says, did you check out Galactic Cruise or Unconscious Mind? I've played Unconscious Mind. I have a video about that, but I have not played Galactic Cruise yet. I almost got in the game at Geekway, but didn't quite make that happen, unfortunately. Susanna mentioned that one of her favorites at Geekway was the game Northwest. It's a charming, lightweight abstract that feels like a cross between Cascadia and chess. I saw that on the table, Susanna. I saw you had that for a little while and was curious to play it, but I never was able to play it myself. Let's see. We reached the end of the questions here. Chad says, have you ever really tried to make a component that just wouldn't work or couldn't be manufactured at a reasonable price point? Probably. That's a great question. Let's see if I can think of. I know I've tested out so many different components. I mean, the most notable that I can think of was that we had enough people ask us for a card shuffler for Wingspan that I was like, oh, what if we just made a card shuffler and included it in an expansion or something like that? But the options we found were just so big and they didn't work consistently well, and they required a bunch of different molds so that we could make our own version of it, and it's very plastic heavy that we didn't pursue that. But beyond that, I'm sure there are plenty of components that I've tried that haven't worked or couldn't work at the price point that I wanted. If I think of any, I'll definitely let you know. Yeah, Garrett's giving an example for the app. He says, still waiting on the app for the Dark Quarter, the Destiny's follow-up, and have had the physical components for a few months now. And the game was already delayed 18 months previously. Apps are risky. Yeah, this is a great example. And that's from a company that is actually really good at making apps alongside physical games. I didn't get to do a chocolate of the day, but I wanted to mention Corey from Blue Falcon was here briefly. I don't know if he's still here, but Corey went on a board game cruise recently, and he brought back these chocolates for me from that cruise. And Corey, I'm going to dig into these today. So thank you so much for giving me the chocolate of the day today. I hope you all this is on my mind a lot recently because of how we were impacted by the tornado. I hope you're safe. I hope you have power. I hope you have electricity and water, and that you have a moment of joy today, whether it's through a treat of a game or a person in your life, a conversation like Julio said, or a food treat like chocolate. I wish that for all of you who are watching this today. Thanks for joining the conversation. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for bearing with me on this laptop instead of my normal setup. And hopefully the next time I see you, I will be at my normal computer with power back. I really look forward to that. All right, have a great day, have a great week, and I will see you next week or in the comments if you have anything to think of later on YouTube. Take care. Bye.